Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we're talking about how the next big Zelda remake may have already leaked, and that may seem funny to you because we already know about the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time coming up for Nintendo Switch 2 later this year. We still have gotten very little details from Nintendo. We only have one teaser, we do not even know the extent of this remake, and yet now we're talking about another one that in some form appears to have possibly been leaked here. And what's interesting about this is that there also have been rumors of Twilight Princess HD again as well, which we've already covered, but it's just kind of funny to me how we're hearing about all these future Zelda projects, yet the really big one, the Ocarina of Time remake, the one we've been waiting for, it's confirmed, but we're still waiting on details for that one, yet here we are, still hearing about these other things. So what's going on with this Majora's Mask remake? Is it a legitimate leak? Is it a sign for things to come? Well, that's what we're getting into today. Before diving into it though, I'll just point out I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers. We're getting so close, I'm hoping to hit the goal soon. So if you find yourself enjoying my video and you haven't subscribed already, your subscription would mean quite a lot. So for those who missed out on hearing about the whole Twilight Princess thing, there are a few different people who have heard about Twilight Princess coming out soon, and Twilight Princess has been rumored to come out for years, and it just hasn't happened. The Twilight Princess HD from back on Wii U, but the people who have recently heard about it are Attack the Backlog and Nash Weedle. They talked about in an Attack the Backlog podcast not so long ago. And personally, I'm kind of skeptical of this one. Attack the Backlog and Nash Weedle do hear about things, and they have heard about a lot of things and have been correct about them. Attack the Backlog has a very good track record, although a small sample size, and Nash Weedle, much larger sample size, that has certainly gotten some crazy things right, like Ocarina of Time Remake, for example, but has also gotten some big things incorrect in the past as well, so I would certainly practice some skepticism here. But regardless, just thinking about it, the idea of us getting something Twilight Princess soon, when we're about to get the Ocarina of Time remake, seems unlikely to me unless it's through Nintendo Switch Online, or it's something that is a very basic enhancement or adaptation from the Wii U version, so it can be played for Switch 1 owners, since the Ocarina of Time remake is going to be a Switch 2 exclusive, and because it's Zelda's 40th anniversary, maybe Nintendo feels like they can put out more than just one Zelda release, and also they may want to put out multiple things in lead up to the live-action Zelda movie next year. So maybe something like that, something small that's just basically like a port of Twilight Princess HD, but the notion of this Twilight Princess release of being something like an ambitious remake, like that initial tech demo from back in 2011 that was showcasing the abilities of the Wii U, or anything like what we're going to get for the Ocarina of Time remake, it's not going to happen soon. But could it happen eventually down the road? I think so, but we're talking about years away. Which brings me to this Majora's Mask thing. The Majora's Mask thing, I do believe, would be happening much sooner than a full-blown Twilight Princess remake to follow up the Ocarina of Time remake. And it appears there might be some evidence to this. So on IMDb, Nobuyuki Hiyama, in his credits for upcoming projects, he is being listed as the adult Link voice actor for The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask HD as Fierce Deity Link. So, what's going on here? Well, one, let's keep in mind that this may not be 100% totally true. Sometimes things show up on IMDb and they aren't necessarily accurate. However, there is some level of verification. So it's not like some random person could go on here, put on information, and it's just on there with no verification. I'm not saying the verification process is extremely complex and accurate, but there is some level of verification. So still, yes, take this with a grain of salt. However, I do find it really interesting that the credits here are for Adult Link and Fierce Deity Link. And what this would mean is that this person is the voice actor for literally Adult Link, and Fierce Deity Link in Majora's Mask is the adult version of Link in that game. Because in Ocarina of Time, you have Child Link and you have Adult Link. They have different voices, and the same applies for Majora's Mask. You have young Child Link throughout most of the game, however you can obtain the Fierce Deity Mask, which allows you to transform into a full-grown adult form, where you would hear the Adult Link voice. And so the implication here is this. There's already an agreement that this person will be doing the voice acting for Adult Link in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, which means there's already a plan in motion to make Majora's Mask after Ocarina of Time. Some people are thinking this Majora's Mask thing could be happening soon. No, I do not think it would be happening soon. What I believe is going to be happening is right now they are finishing up this Ocarina of Time remake that we know is very ambitious, probably the most ambitious remake Nintendo's ever done. We don't know to what extent quite yet. We've already gone over some evidence suggesting that it's more than just a one-to-one remake, but to what extent do they go beyond? That remains to be seen, but there's a lot of speculation right now, by many, including myself, that there's going to be some reimagined elements here, perhaps even a lot of reimagined elements, so it's going to be a fairly ambitious title. And whatever team's been put together to make this will then become the team that's just going to focus on these ambitious remakes moving forward. Not too different from the remakes we've seen from Capcom for all the different Resident Evil games, or from the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. And what's fascinating about these remake series, as I've talked about in a few different videos already, they function as exciting games that feel like modern new games from almost every perspective, and they are incredible in-betweens while we all wait for the mainline series to bring out their next totally new installment. You have different development teams involved here working on these mainline series. And so in the case of Zelda, Zelda has had, for several generations now, been trending in the direction of longer and longer development times. And the fact of the matter is, waiting 6, 7, 8 years for the next brand new 3D Zelda just isn't healthy for the brand. And so what can Nintendo do here? Rushing out the next open-air Zelda so it's not as good as it can be is not a good idea, goes against Nintendo's philosophy, so that's not what they're going to do. Maybe they can look to ways to speed up their process, become more efficient, that's certainly plausible, but that is a challenge we're seeing across the industry right now. Something else that can be done, though, is have other teams working on different games to come out in between. So similar to Capcom and Square Enix, maybe Nintendo's now putting together a team so there can be a remake series of Zelda games to come out in between the big open-air Zelda games and the 2D Zelda games. That way you have separate teams getting all the time they need to make sure each Zelda game is as good as it can be, and it comes out after it's had enough time in development. But that way also fans aren't waiting so long for the next big Zelda game because they have different teams making different types of Zelda games. And so, this IMDb listing, if it's based on true, real, legitimate information, is suggesting that there's already this plan in place, that they're already thinking that after Ocarina of Time they're going to begin work on Majora's Mask, and perhaps, maybe even, there's going to be some sort of teaser to this, which is why this Majora's Mask thing is here in this actor's credits. Of course, it could just be the case that they signed some sort of agreement where they will do the voice work for Majora's Mask when that time comes. Now, some people might take a look at the name here where it says The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask HD, and they might think that maybe it's actually coming out a lot sooner, and it's actually not an ambitious remake at all, but just Majora's Mask upscaled to HD. Maybe they take the 3DS version. And perhaps it has something to do with Zelda's 40th anniversary. Maybe this even ties into what we've heard about Twilight Princess, and Nintendo's just going to be putting out all the different 3D Zeldas in some sort of repackaged form. I think most people agree that it's extremely unlikely that there could be any other Zelda that would have as much ambition or effort as the Ocarina of Time remake we're getting probably for this holiday, but maybe the others could see some sort of slight, subtle improvements, maybe something like what we saw for Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I don't think I can rule that out entirely, because maybe Nintendo really does want to celebrate Zelda's 40th anniversary in a very big way with multiple releases. That's possible. But a couple things. Even if that were to happen, I don't think that means that we wouldn't eventually get an ambitious Majora's Mask remake or an ambitious Twilight Princess remake. These projects would take years, so I wouldn't be expecting them to come out anytime soon. At least 4 years from now, perhaps more. In the case of Majora's Mask remake, immediately following up the Ocarina of Time remake one, which wouldn't really be that immediate 4 years later, but that would be kind of my anticipation, because we're also going to be getting a 2D Zelda and the next open-air Zelda beforehand. But the other thing I'll say here is that I don't really understand why they would be adding new voice work lines for just like a upscaled port. I don't think they would be doing that. I think the implication here is there's going to be new voice lines for a big, new, ambitious release, and I think they're just calling it Majora's Mask HD because it hasn't been announced yet, and it's just an indication of an enhancement when that comes later down the road, eventually. Assuming this is based off anything. And fact of the matter is, this IMDb page, even if it's not accurate, I'm still in full belief that we are going to see a Majora's Mask remake in the vein of what we're getting for the Ocarina of Time remake. The Ocarina of Time remake is going to do something special here, and it's going to open the door for more remakes to follow. As I explained earlier, getting these remakes out, having a team put together to make these, while there's other Zelda teams making the other Zelda games, is something that's actually needed to keep that flow of content going, to help remedy the problem of increasing development times, and also for the health of the Zelda brand. So I expect it, just not anytime soon. It would be years away. There is actually another interesting angle to consider here. This idea that perhaps Nintendo has already greenlit not just the Ocarina of Time remake, obviously, but the next big remake being Majora's Mask, because there have been theories on who is developing this project or who is helping to develop this project. From what we've heard from Special Nick, so it is still a rumor, but Special Nick has some pretty good sources, so I think he's probably on the money here. It's a combination of Nintendo and an outside party. But who would be the outside party? Well, a team that some people have been thinking about would be Ember Lab. And what's really interesting about them is that they are actually the ones responsible for that super cool Majora's Mask short film that came out so many years ago. The Majora's Mask Terrible Fate video, that fan film. And what's interesting is that Ember Lab then went on to start making like some pretty significant games, such as the Kenna series. And Kenna, as many fans have noticed, is very Zelda-esque. Like if Nintendo were to have been making Zelda games with more powerful hardware, like the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 in prior years, maybe they could have looked something like Kenna. So Ember Lab has had this history of kind of bringing in a little bit of that Zelda look with their games, and even like I was just looking at the Kenna Bridge of Spirits trailer, that first trailer for the Kenna series, and looking at that in comparison to the Majora's Mask Terrible Fate video, that fan film, there are some interesting similarities there with the mask and the overall aesthetic, the art style. And what's even more interesting is that there's actually been some people asking around about how Ember Lab feels about working on Zelda. So check this out. This had actually happened recently because there was an interview regarding bringing Kenna Bridge of Spirits to Nintendo Switch 2. Back in 2016, Ember Lab created the Zelda Majora's Mask Terrible Fate fan film. Given the studio's origins, would you be interested in working on the series if Nintendo granted the team access to the Zelda IP? Do you have any ideas that you implement for a new game? Here, they say, we love the Zelda series at the studio. It was a major inspiration for so many of us when we were kids, and each installment continues to inspire us now that we are making games ourselves. Making the Terrible Fate fan film was truly a labor of love, and we are so glad we could share it with so many other Zelda fans. We've currently got our hands full with the sequel to our Spirit Guide's adventure in Kena Scars of Cosmora, releasing later this year, but if an opportunity came along to create something in the Zelda world, I have to say that would be quite exciting. So there's nothing here that tells us with any level of confidence at all that Ember Lab is the studio helping Nintendo out with these big Zelda remakes, but I think it's an interesting idea to consider here that they may already have a team in mind, maybe it's a team like Ember Lab, if not them themselves, that is just geared and ready to work on Zelda. So many people love Zelda, so I'm sure there are other studios that would be ecstatic to have this kind of opportunity. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.